Tonight, Hudson River searchers recover the helicopter and say they've located the plane as the investigation into yesterday's deadly mid-air collision steps up. I'm Russ Mitchell. Also tonight, a bump in the road for the Cash for Clunkers program. Dealers who say they are running out of new cars. Meet the latest endangered species, corner mailboxes, targeted for removal by the post office, but not without a fight.
We were just not going to take it lying down.
This is the CBS Evening News with Russ Mitchell.
And good evening. Search crews have now recovered at least 7 bodies from the Hudson River following yesterday's mid-air collision of a helicopter and small plane. Tonight, the investigation into just what went wrong continues as families on both sides of the Atlantic mourn and wait for answers. Hari Srinivasan has the latest.
Search crews hoisted what's left of the sightseeing helicopter out of the Hudson River this afternoon. Seen here just seconds after it collided midair with a small plane yesterday.
The recovery efforts are focused on the Piper now. Side scanning sonar have revealed a number of promising targets.
The Liberty Tours Eurocopter A-Star 350 had just taken off from Manhattan's west side. The Piper PA-32 left New Jersey's Teterboro Airport bound for the Jersey Shore. On board the plane was pilot Stephen Altman, his brother Daniel, and nephew Douglas. The helicopter was carrying 5 friends vacationing from Bologna, Italy, who were celebrating one couple's 25th wedding anniversary.
And I expressed the ambassador our feelings, our sympathies and prayers for the 5 Italian tourists that died, but for all 9 people.
So how busy does this get?
It gets really busy.
Justin Green is an aviation attorney as well as a certified commercial pilot who has flown over the Hudson. He says the FAA can prevent this sort of tragedy.
They can make the helicopters operate at a lower altitude than the fixed-wing aircraft coming through the area. And if you're at different altitudes, you're never going to have an accident like this.
Just last month, the Department of Transportation released a report to the FAA about the safety of the on-demand flight industry, which includes small planes and helicopters like the ones used by Liberty Tours. It found in 2007 and 2008, commercial air carriers had 0 passenger deaths. In contrast, during that same period, there were 33 fatal on-demand accidents, resulting in 109 deaths. Incidents involving on-demand aircraft have happened in New York before. In 2006, Yankee pitcher Corey Lytle and his flight instructor crashed into a Manhattan high-rise. And in 2005, another Liberty Tours helicopter splashed into the East River. All 7 aboard survived.
While you saw the bulk of the helicopter wreckage being pulled out earlier today, researchers are still using sonar to try and find the bulk of the aircraft that's still in the water, and of course those 2 bodies as well. Russ?
Hari, let me ask you about these federal safety recommendations for these so-called on-demand aircraft companies. What can you tell us about those?
Well, you know, these recommendations, the ones that were made in July, are only echoing ones that have been around since 2005. The FAA's own subcommittee put out 124 different recommendations, and very few, if any of them, have been implemented yet.
Hari Srinivasan here in New York City. Thank you. President Obama is arriving in Mexico at this hour for a summit meeting with the leaders of Mexico and Canada. The 2-day North American Leaders Summit in Guadalajara will tackle everything from swine flu to border security to trade. And joining us from Guadalajara is Chief White House Correspondent Chip Reid. Good evening, Chip. Let me ask you, first of all, let's talk about the H1N1 virus. Why has this topic made it so high to the presidential level?
Well, partly, Russ, because flu season is just around the corner for all of North America. There will be an increase in H1N1 cases this fall. The White House says that is just the fact. And what they want to do is, number one, make sure that the 3 nations are talking and coordinating the response, but they also want to make sure that there is no panic, because economic relations between these 3 countries are so important. The last thing they want is for countries to start closing borders because they're in a panic over the H1N1 virus.
Tonight, President Obama will meet with Mexican President Calderon one-on-one. What will be topic A on that agenda?
Well, you can bet that Calderon will bring up the drug war in Mexico. It has been devastating for this country. More than 10,000 people killed in the last few years. And when President Obama was here in April, he said the United States shares some of the blame. Number one, because the United States is where so many of the drugs in Mexico go because of U.S. consumption of drugs. And number two, because so many of the guns that are killing people here come over the border from the United States. So you can bet that President Calderon will bring up that issue again.
And of course, trade, a big issue between these three countries. What will the Obama administration be pushing at these discussions?
They will be pushing to keep trade barriers low because Canada is the #1 trade partner for the United States. Mexico is the #3 trade partner for the United States, and they want to make sure that any trade disputes don't turn into any trade wars. Russ?
Chip Reid traveling with the president in Guadalajara, Mexico. Thank you very much.
You bet.
It appears the Cash for Clunkers program has hit another bump in the road. Last week, the Senate gave the green light for an additional $2 billion for the program. But now, for consumers, there's bad news coming from dealers. Terrell Brown has more.
It's a 5-passenger vehicle.
A packed car dealership in New York. One more sign that the government's new Cash for Clunkers program is still moving at top speed.
If it wasn't for this program, I'd probably wait longer, maybe get a used car, something like that.
Brian Benstock is the general manager of Paragon Honda. He says he sold nearly 1,000 cars in the last 30 days.
Our new car business has nearly doubled, so it's been an outstanding success.
But because of increased demand, the dealership is now running out of cars to sell, especially top gas savers.
Have you guys sold out of hybrid cars?
We are completely sold out of the hybrid cars. The good news is we do have some coming in for the end of the month, but those cars are completely sold out.
From Pennsylvania to Idaho, dealers say inventory is running low. This New York dealership even had to close this weekend because it ran out of cars.
It doesn't surprise me at all that they're running out of cars.
Running out of cars is potentially one issue, but these dealers are selling cars on faith, hoping to get money back on cars that have already left the lot. This weekend, the dealership has sold 50 cars so far. Under the program, if they all meet just the minimum clunker rebate of $3,500, Brian is expected to be reimbursed $175,000 through the plan.
Oh, it certainly have an impact on profitability. I mean, we're counting on that money coming in.
But he hasn't seen a penny from the government from one car they've sold. And if the delay is a long one, that could prevent him from ordering more inventory.
You have to have faith in the government. I mean, if we don't have the government, what do we have?
But while these problems are a big worry, dealers like Benstock say compared to sales before the clunker program,
this is putting people back to work.
Running out of cars isn't such a bad problem to have. Terrell Brown, CBS News, New York.
More economic news now. Despite signs that things may be getting better, the U.S. Postal Service said last week it is on track to lose $7 billion this year. Hundreds of post offices could be shut down. Mail delivery could be cut to 5 days a week. And Bianca Solorzano tells us even that mailbox on your corner is in danger of being stamped out.
In Otisville, Maine, a town so small that it doesn't even have its own zip code, the decision by the U.S. Postal Service to remove its lone blue mailbox hit town clerk Sharon Matthews personally.
You know, we don't have a lot, but what we have, we want to keep.
The mailbox sits outside the town office on Otisville's main road, State Route 121. The nearest post office is an inconvenient 4-mile drive to the next town.
We took a stand.
Residents stood and complained after a white notice taped to the mailbox last month announced it would be removed in 10 days.
No heads up at all.
The reason? Not enough letters. Any mailbox averaging fewer than 25 pieces a day is stamped for removal. And it's not just small towns. Here in Allentown, Pennsylvania, the state's third largest city, and across the nation, about half of these mailboxes have been removed in just the last 4 years. Did you notice the mailboxes were disappearing?
Not at first, no.
Historian Joe Guerrera says the blue mailbox, around since 1850, is becoming an antique.
We don't send letters, we don't write letters like we used to.
Blame email. The Postal Service certainly does, but Guerrera says the loss is not only in postal revenue.
Historians rely on letters and diaries to reconstruct the past. And one of the things that we bemoan about is the fact that these letters are not going to exist in the future.
So when they get pulled off, you bring them all here?
Yep, we bring them in here.
At Allentown's Central Post Office, its boiler room is becoming a mailbox morgue. Boxes that have seen their last collection day are gathering dust, waiting to be scrapped.
Same as any other corporation out there or business, we're trying to reduce our costs to better other areas of the Postal Service.
That cost-saving argument was a hard sell in Otisville. On the day we visited, the daily pickup took less than 60 seconds.
About how many letters?
Probably 50.
And that's enough, along with the outcry, for Otisville's blue mailbox to get a reprieve for now.
We just really thought, we should stand for our rights and not just be mowed over saying, you don't count.
Counting the letters until they stop coming. Bianca Solorzano, CBS News, Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Overseas, a powerful and deadly typhoon is battering Southeast Asia this weekend. Dozens are missing and feared dead in Taiwan. Local television showed these dramatic pictures of a resort hotel collapsing into a raging river as floodwaters washed away its foundations. The typhoon hit the nearby coast of China shortly after. Almost 1 million people were evacuated inland. Soldiers used boats to rescue those stranded in homes by the floodwaters. Coming up on tonight's CBS Evening News, remembering the calendar photographer who gave dignity to the homeless. And when we come back, tough healthcare questions for members of Congress, regardless of where they stand. More bad news at the pump for you tonight. The price of gas has jumped 16 cents in the past 2 weeks to an average of $2.64 per gallon. With Congress out of town for the month, Washington has quieted down considerably, but outside the Capitol, in town hall meetings across the country, the debate over health care reform is loud and nasty, even when audience and speaker agree. Kelly Kobiella has more.
We can't spend any more money. We've got to stop.
The summer recess is no holiday for Mississippi Congressman Gene Taylor, a conservative or blue dog Democrat.
I think we need to keep the promises we've already made.
He's opposed to his party's health care reform bill, yet still taking a beating at home.
I want to know what price tag does Gene Taylor sell out?
Okay, well, let's start off.
The town hall meeting that usually draws 24 brought more than 200 this past week, some part of an organized grassroots campaign against the president's health care reform and his party in general.
They're Marxists, they're socialists, and you will not abandon that party.
In this part of Mississippi, where an electric blanket manufacturer and the logging industry are the big employers, the jobless rate is higher than the national average. Nearly 1 in 4 people in Wayne County, Mississippi is uninsured. Even so, many here have serious concerns about a government solution.
I don't see how they can put another government-funded health care plan out there.
Lori Mills works for a local hospital. Even with insurance, her last pregnancy cost $10,000 out of pocket. Still, she doesn't think the government can do better.
We can't manage Medicaid and Medicare. I don't see us functioning with another government-mandated program.
Congressman Taylor told a skeptical crowd over and over he didn't either.
You count on me. You can count on me. If I get an opportunity to get a better price on drugs, I'm going to do it. If I get a price on generics, I'm going to do it. You can count on me.
Do you think they were satisfied with your answers?
I think so. Again, they're against it, I'm against it, so yeah.
Is that going to change, do you think, in the next 4 weeks?
I don't think they will change their opinion. I don't think I will change my opinion.
If he does, he knows there will be even more to answer for on his next trip home. Kelly Kobiella, CBS News, Waynesboro, Mississippi.
A California state prison near Los Angeles is on lockdown after more than 1,000 inmates rioted overnight and at least 1 barrack caught fire. Officials say 55 injured prisoners were hospitalized in rioting between Hispanic and African-American inmates. Officials have not said what sparked the riot. And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, 15 years of the homeless calendar. The new G.I. Joe action movie stormed the weekend box office. It took in a whopping $56 million for the 4th biggest August opening ever. Meryl Streep's Julie and Julia cooked up a solid $20 million for second. And finally tonight, more than a month after his death, a very special photographer is still being mourned by the homeless of Berkeley, California. As John Blackstone tells us, he didn't just put the problem of homelessness on the map, he put it on a calendar.
Thank you, Duncan.
At a sidewalk memorial on Berkeley's Telegraph Avenue, B.N. Duncan was remembered by the street people whose lives he documented with dignity.
I love you, Duncan. Thank you for putting me in the street calendar.
Duncan was just a short step from destitution himself, but for 15 years before his death, he took photographs and put out a calendar featuring not pinups or cars or art, but the homeless and the strange. Not people to shun, he insisted, but people worth learning about.
We're not trying to make people sob with pity. We're trying to show that these people can be interesting and enjoyable to know about.
Back in the 1990s, there was Julia Vinograd, Miss April.
I don't imagine you'd thought of yourself as a calendar girl somehow.
Why not, buddy?
Mark Hawthorne, on the streets for more than 30 years, was once a reporter for the New York Times.
You know, I was normal for 35 years and then I got bored.
For Hawthorne and others who live outdoors with all their possessions, being in the calendar was a point of pride.
Street people don't even look in mirrors, so to see a photograph of themselves is pretty empowering.
Duncan insisted on looking at the lost souls of Telegraph Avenue as an anthropologist might, with endless interest and compassion.
He's kind of mixed up in the head, but he's got vital spirit. She is really a gifted person. She identifies a lot with animals.
He took them seriously. These were his people.
Printer and publisher Mark Wyman says Duncan was a major presence in Berkeley.
Genius. I think Duncan was a genius.
So does Duncan's sister Elaine, who had doubts about her brother's interest in life on the streets.
There were times when I thought, oh my God, you know, why is he doing this?
Duncan was 65 when he died on June 27th. He left a storage locker full of work, some of which is bound for the library at Ohio State University.
He was a voice where there was no voice, and this meant a great deal to him.
Everything he did was weird. Everything he did was odd. Everything he did was totally unique.
He made his subjects unique, too. John Blackstone, CBS News, Berkeley, California.
And that is the CBS Evening News. Later on CBS 60 Minutes. Thanks for joining us this Sunday evening. I'm Russ Mitchell, CBS News in New York. Katie Couric will be here tomorrow night. Good night.